Hi, and welcome to the Revive, Thrive, and Optimize podcast. I'm Billy Weiss, compounding pharmacist and health and wellness expert. Glad you're with us today. As always, my co-host Janet, and behind the scenes, producer Mike. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Mike. Good morning, Billy. Good morning, everybody out there. It's early and it's a little chilly this morning, but we're ready to go with some hot topics.
Yep.
And I would love it if I could get you guys to subscribe and like our podcast. It's the Revive, Thrive, and Optimize podcast, and it's on YouTube. So there's a little button that says subscribe, and all that means is that you'll get a notification each week when a new podcast comes out. So that would really help us out.
Yep.
And just to go back, last week we were talking about alcohol, and I sort of shared my personal journey as to why I decided to stop drinking alcohol. And then this week I heard that Joe Rogan decided that he would tell everyone why he stopped drinking alcohol. So first of all, thank you for helping me stop drinking alcohol. Anyway, Joe Rogan said, kind of how I feel, that why do I work out so hard and try to eat right and live a good lifestyle and work on my sleep and have all these biohacking tools, the heat, the cold plunging, working out, all that stuff, just to ruin it with alcohol on the weekends. So I'm feeling a lot better.
Well, good.
I heard
That's
Ron,
great.
the comedian Ron White, he also stopped drinking, and his whole act was, the drink in hand and all that. So I think that's just pretty cool. So today, I'm putting you on the spot.
Okay.
And I have a bunch of questions. So this is going to be an Ask Billy episode.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. We've been talking a lot about peptides. And the question I'm getting is, are all peptides GLP-1s? And what's the difference?
No, all peptides are definitely not GLP-1s. That's a very small percentage of the whole peptide world. GLP-1s, of course, are most well known for, weight loss, fat loss, hopefully. But there are peptides we talked about for muscle gain, for fat loss, for brain function, for energy production, anti-inflammatories, rebuild tissues, help. Skin is a big one. Heart, kidney improvements with some. So peptides run a big array of things that they can do for us. They're definitely not just GLP-1s.
Is this a new thing?
No, peptides have been around for decades.
Right.
Used in Russia, certainly, I think as far back as the 70s is what we're finding now.
But is it probably because of the GLP-1s while they're getting so much press right now?
Oh yeah, I mean they are definitely the hottest topic in the world of medicine or biohacking or whatever you want to call it today, because the Ozempics of the world, the Wegovy's of the world, the Zepbounds of the world are what everybody seems to be onto right now as far as the medical field and the people asking for them. So yeah, those are what everybody wants to know about, but there are peptides for a lot of different things outside of that are very effective.
And if you go back and listen to our Peptides 101 podcast, I think it'll cover a lot of that. But even this week, I just kept getting questions from people. I'd say, hey, have you tried this peptide, for pain, for instance? And they're like, oh no, I don't want to be on a GLP-1. And it's like, wait. They're two different things.
Right.
So thanks for clearing that up. And then also, as far as peptides and GLP-1s, I think that some of the new news is like microdosing, and where I love to talk about hormones and perimenopause and menopause, I'm seeing where they're using microdosing peptides, like the ones we talked about, BPC 157 or ipamorelin, things like that, to help during perimenopause and menopause. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think if you are proactive and start earlier, it's always better. I mean, obviously the IPA can help, maintain muscle, help the body burn fat at the same time.
Helps you sleep too, I think.
It can help sleep because it increases, growth hormone production, or it increases the release of growth hormone, I should say. So that helps.
What about I noticed when I was going through menopause, right when I came to you, when my joints were hurting so bad could you use a peptide to help with that?
Well, certainly BPC 157 and TB 500 can help with any kind of joint or inflammatory kind of conditions like that. So that would be one. ARA 290 is great for any type of nerve pain or nerve issues, can be used for that. So yeah, like I say, there are peptides, Janet, as you know, for so many different things that people are probably not as familiar with as they are the GLPs.
And I think it's cool that the doctors are using them as we lose estrogen. They're using the peptides to help these things in the body that are the effects of losing the estrogen. And now that I said the big word estrogen, another question that I get a lot for you is, so you're hearing about the menopause revolution, that's all Oprah and everybody's talking about, and hormone replacement therapy. So I have a lot of clients and students that are way past menopause. Maybe they're mid to late 60s or even in their 70s. They're eating right. They've got a great lifestyle. They're working out, all these things. Is it too late to start HRT when you're late 60s and 70s?
Oh, it's never too late to put back the hormones that, are natural to our bodies. So no, it's not too late. Again, it's better. It's preferred to start earlier as they start to diminish proactively, but certainly 60s and 70s is not too old to start hormones. I would say 80s is not too old.
That's awesome.
Think about restoring testosterone. It helps build muscle, helps the brain function better, helps the body burn fat, helps control insulin and sugar more effectively. Think about adding progesterone, which is anti-inflammatory. Progesterone is it fights it fights a lot of different kinds of cancers. Progesterone is the feel-good hormone. It helps women sleep. Estrogen helps build bone, helps the brain work better. I mean, just there's
DHEA.
so many. DHEA, pregnenolone just helps the brain keep functioning. So there's so many hormones that at any age could still be and will still be beneficial as long as they're done properly. And when we say estrogen, we should really clarify, Janet, we're talking about bioidentical compounded micronized estradiol. Because estrogen is a term that can go a lot of ways, including pregnant horse urine, which is what Premarin is. That's not what we're talking about. I would say that's never safe.
That's great news, because those of us in our 60s and 70s that, are focused on longevity can, yes, go ask your doctor or come ask me and I can help you get to Billy or get to the right hormone specialist. It's not too late.
Yeah, it's never too late. But if they go ask their doctor, they will probably be told that it's dangerous and it's too late. So they need to find the right provider. Okay.
A lot of information out about that right now, especially with it being brought up that women are sort of left out when it comes to science. And, we've been compared to men all these years, and now they're, looking at how women and men are so different. And one more question is, this keeps coming up too. Well, I've already been on hormone replacement therapy, just like you said. I started early. I've been through menopause. I'm still on hormone replacement. So now am I getting to where it's dangerous and I need to get off of it because I've been on it for 10 years?
I would tell you, Janet, that anytime it's done properly, we don't see any research that says it's ever dangerous.
So I can stay on it forever.
If it's compounded, micronized, bioidentical, dosed properly, yes, absolutely. You can stay on it until the day we're not here anymore, is what I would say.
Good, because I don't want to be without it.
There's no reason, I was going to say, to come off, because it's natural to our bodies. It's natural to women's bodies. So they recognize it. There's really, when done properly, no side effects, only benefits.
I think that another benefit would be that it helps your marriage, so many things that we're seeing where it looked like maybe women were a little bit crazy. And it was just that our brain, our hormones were changing and we were just losing, our minds basically. So let's find another question for you. This is on a whole nother subject, but this has come up a couple times this week.
Okay.
So a friend and in another case, a student both ended up in the ER thinking they were having a heart attack.
Goodness.
One is a man, one is a woman. So I think we all need to always review and know what are the symptoms of a heart attack, when should you go to the emergency room, and what's different between the experience of a man and a woman and their symptoms.
Okay, so I don't know that I can so much talk about a difference between a man and a woman, but we can certainly talk about some of the major things that we would look for.
Okay.
Certainly, and the most obvious is chest pain, right? If you're having chest pain, it can sometimes feel like maybe you're just having indigestion, but it can be, from the heart. So we need to make sure we can try to distinguish that.
Could it just be stress also?
Well, it could absolutely be stress. Absolutely. The stress can affect the gut. The stress can affect the heart. But if somebody's having chest pain, I always say it's probably better to be safe than sorry.
Yeah.
That's the most probably widely looked at or widely known symptom. But it can also be shortness of breath. It could be you're going upstairs and all of a sudden you're not normally short of breath and you are.
Like you feel faint a little
bit? You could certainly get a little dizzy headed, a little faint when you wouldn't because your heart's working so hard.
What about your blood pressure dropping really low? Is that a symptom?
Well, you could have a low blood pressure or a high blood pressure with it, because if you're what we call tachycardic, where your heart rate is really high, it can cause the pressure to drop. Because sometimes the body is trying to compensate for the high heart rate. We're not pumping the blood properly, and so the pressure will drop.
There's something about pain in the arm.
Yeah, so a lot of times they'll get the pain that will run down the arm, and that's because the meridian for the heart runs down the arm.
Oh, that makes sense.
It's more common in the left arm, but it could be in either arm.
Okay.
So that's certainly a symptom. And sometimes just pressure. It doesn't even have to be pain in the chest, but some people will describe it as, I feel like somebody's standing on my chest, or I just feel like there's pressure there.
I heard my friends say it felt like an elephant was sitting on his chest.
Yeah, people will describe it that way. So it doesn't even have to be so much a pain sometimes, but a pressure. So I would always look at, have I been short of breath? Have I had any dizziness? Have I had any fast heart rate that I could feel? Have I had a weird blood pressure reading high or low? Is my heart rate off? Something easy that people can do and keep with them at home or one in the car is a pulse ox. Just a little device you put on your finger, your index finger, and it will show you your oxygen saturation and your heart rate. So if the oxygen saturation is certainly not, 94, 95 or above, then there's a problem, and that could be an indicator that the heart is not pumping properly.
I think it was my friend's smartwatch that told her.
Yes, watches now can do a lot of that. They can, even the Apple Watch I know can do a one lead EKG with your index finger to see if you're having what we call atrial fibrillation, which would be that really fast heart rate, that tachycardia. And they can certainly give you heart rates and different things now that we didn't have before. I'm not sure about pulse ox, but they may be able to do that, how much oxygen is delivered in the blood. So there are devices, and those pulse ox meters for your fingers are fairly inexpensive, and they work within 2 or 3 seconds when you put them on the finger.
What's the thing about taking a baby aspirin?
So the idea behind the baby aspirin is that if you had a small clot that was going through a place that maybe is calcified, has narrowed, or is completely blocked, that the baby aspirin can help thin the blood because it's an antiplatelet compound, and it can help the blood flow through. So it's not going to fix the issue, but it might buy you time.
Thins the blood a little.
To get somewhere, to get a stent or a bypass or whatever the person may need.
Those are good tools. We talk about all the biohacking tools, but having a smartwatch or, a pulsometer like that, or, having your baby aspirin in your toolbox.
I think one thing, Janet, that is the most important is that if you're somebody who takes care of yourself, you probably are in tune. When something's off, you know it. And I think intuition and knowing that something's just not right, and then trying to figure out what it is. And obviously, if you think it's your heart, you have to act quicker than if you think it's, something, your knee hurts. It's different.
So since we're on heart, and I know I could say, hey, what can we do to prevent a heart attack? And you're going to go through, all the steps. But what are some of the things or tests that we can take, before we have an issue?
I think the most important test is probably one people haven't heard of. It's called a CAC score, or a coronary artery calcium score. They're probably going to have to ask their doctor to order it, or nurse practitioner or PA. They're going to have to pay out of pocket. They're going to have to go to a facility that has the ability to do a CAC, and it's probably going to be about $100. But it actually is a high-speed picture, we'll call it, of the heart and the vessels around the heart. And it can detect calcification in the heart arteries and around the heart. So it gives us it's called an Agatston score. Dr. Agatston came up with the scoring method, and it can show us long before a stress test, long before any blood test, long before anything else, whether we have blockages or not from coronary artery calcium buildup. This test should not involve anything other than laying on a high-speed device that takes pictures. Lay there, get the pictures taken by holding your breath a couple times. That's it.
And it doesn't take but a few minutes.
5 minutes or less, if that. Yeah. So that to me is the most valuable $100 anybody will ever spend, considering heart disease #1 killer.
Well, I got to agree. I had my appointment for my calcium score, and they told me it would be $100 out of pocket. And then literally when I got there, they said, it's going to be $450 with your insurance. And I left because I was mad.
Yeah, don't use the insurance, right?
Yeah, exactly.
$100.
But then they were like, but we see you have insurance. Anyway, that's a whole nother subject.
Janet, there are cases of people who get, they pass the highest cardiology executive test with flying colors, the say the stress test, all the blood tests, all those things. And then they have coronary artery calcium because they keep having symptoms and they have severe blockage. So don't always depend on those only. Let's look at everything. And I think that score, that test gives us the most information that any test can give us.
So write that down, you guys. Get a coronary artery calcium score.
Yep.
Or you can just tell your doctor, you could just call it a calcium score. Is that?
Should be able to, yeah. We want a 0. Everybody wants a 0. That means that the Agatston scale shows no blockages at all.
If you don't have a 0, then you want to monitor where you're at and not let it go up. Is that
right? You want to slow the growth to less than 15% a year.
Okay. So even if your score starts out high, that's not necessarily.
Well, if you're not having symptoms, even if you have a high score, that means that your body has adapted to that particular condition.
And the blood's figured out how to get around.
Yeah, we'd rather have a lower score.
Yeah.
But if you have a high score and you're not having symptoms, it's just a warning sign that, hey, let's start to correct what caused these blockages, right?
Right.
And that's not really that hard to do, but unfortunately the Heart Society, the American Heart Association, and all those people say it's a chronic progressive disease. It's going to grow at more than 15% a year. There's nothing you can do. Well, that's just total nonsense, because we have people that not only slow their growth, but their score decreases.
Wow.
So it is possible. Now, these people are pretty dedicated to doing the plan that I put together for them, but it can be done. And, it's not some crazy.
It's not rocket
stuff
science
you're doing. Yeah, it's not. Yeah,
well,
it's not
I don't know.
Science.
I think it is rocket science, because I've seen so many people come to you and they can't get any more answers. They can't get any more help, and they've hit a dead end road. And literally, the doctors have told them there's nothing else we can do. And you've put them on a plan, and I don't know if you want to call it a miracle or what, but I've seen that so many times. But just to end on our little chat about the heart, brings me full circle back around to hormone replacement therapy. Is so good for women and our hearts. And so it just, being on hormone replacement therapy, I believe is going to be the best thing that I can do to prevent a heart attack.
Well, Janet,
with my family history, especially.
I've talked about this before on the podcast, but I think it's worth repeating since you bring it up. Before menopause, 1 in 26 women die of heart disease. After menopause, It's 1 and 2.
And what has changed?
Now, what changed?
Estrogen.
The testosterone level, the estrogen level, the progesterone level, the DHEA level, and so forth. So when we look at that one statistic and know that the number one killer for both men and women in the United States is heart disease, and 1 in 26 women before menopause die of heart disease, and 1 in 2 after, it should be a clue to us. To go back to your earlier question, I probably should have put this in then. It's never too late to get on the right compounded, micronized, bioidentical hormones in the right forms. So whether it should be a capsule, whether it should be orally versus a cream, we need to do it right. And we've gone over all that in some podcasts.
So we can point you to other podcasts.
Right.
And, so that hit on 3 really big topics. Hormone replacement therapy for women who are older, the difference in a GLP-1, and a peptide, just being a category of peptides, and heart attacks and heart disease. So if we have time, just with one more thing.
Janet, before we go to the next thing,
okay.
I should also point out that there's more testosterone receptors in a man and a woman's heart than anywhere else in our bodies. And after menopause in a woman, their testosterone typically is going to be extremely low.
0.
We see it all the time where it's really close to 0. But we're also seeing that in not 0, but really extremely low levels in men of all ages.
And this is more in recent.
It's more common today, I think, because of all the environmental factors that are here now that we didn't have 100, 200, 300 years ago.
Right.
So real quick, I just wanted to throw that in before you go to the next subject.
And I don't know if we have time to go to the next subject or not, but I wanted to touch a little bit on thyroid.
Okay.
I was in a big group discussion this week on Hashimoto's disease, and it just seems across the board like women's thyroids are tanking, and it's going under the radar with the testing.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has to do with weight loss, losing weight too fast, I think. What do you think?
Well, so women's thyroid issues, ever since I've been in pharmacy for 35 years, have been an issue. But you're right. The testing is inadequate in most cases because they're only doing a TSH, a thyroid stimulating hormone. That's a fine number to look at and gives us a lot of clues, but we really need to know the free, FREE T3, and the free T4 to really get a full picture. And probably if they're really having Hashimoto's, we need to know their antibodies. We need to know their TPO and their anti-thyroglobulin antibodies. Because you can have plenty of thyroid hormone in some cases, but the antibodies are actually blocking the action of the hormone at the cellular level. So we need to look at that. But the reason that I think that it is so prominent today, you're right, extremely, I won't call it weight loss, but extreme calorie restriction will certainly tell the body and signal the thyroid to slow down because it feels like we're in a starvation mode. So while we talk about intermittent fasting and eating healthy, it doesn't mean that we want to severely restrict calories. It means that we want to eat good calories that don't raise insulin and sugar. Now, we can cut calories some, but we don't want to severely restrict them, and certainly not long term, because it can send the body signals, and then the thyroid sometimes just does not, for whatever reason, want to fire back up like it did before.
Yeah.
But there's also all the factors that are around today that are hormone disrupting chemicals.
The plastics,
the microplastics, the fluoride, the bromides, the all these things, the glyphosates, the atrazines, all these chemicals that are around. And unfortunately, the average woman, according to the research, is putting on over 35 of these hormone disruptors on their skin care daily. Yeah. So I think that the bodies are just overwhelmed with the amount of again, environmental factors that we didn't used to have to deal with.
And some of it we just can't help.
Yeah. So the answer is you find, again, a good provider who understands bioidentical hormones, who will then prescribe compounded porcine thyroid, because the best way to
compounded porcine thyroid.
Yeah, the best way to overcome that is to replace it, because you can try to restore the thyroid function, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's very difficult to do. It can happen in some cases, but it's really, really hard to do, especially in today's world. I think we just overcome it by taking the right hormone. Again, it's something that the body recognizes, so there's really no side effects. And if you look at the studies, low thyroid hormone called T3, which is why we want to measure free T3, is related to, you asked me about it earlier, heart disease. So another hormone that drops after menopause for women often could be their free T3. And that's related to heart disease in men and women, not just women, but we think of it more commonly with thyroid in women.
It's amazing how all this is connected.
Every system in the body really is connected. That's the reason that I think that this idea today of every provider being or almost every provider being a, quote, specialist, it drives me crazy that the heart doctor only cares about the heart health. The kidney doctor only cares about the kidney health. The endocrinologist only cares about the thyroid and the pancreas health. And really, they all work in a symphony, in a harmony. And so sometimes I think rather than having the one, we'll call it good old family doctors, where they knew everything about you.
Yeah.
And they were looking at the body as a whole.
They have to pick a specialty, and that's
the ortho's only worried about the bones and the joints, right? So,
well, that's where I think that's what brought me to you. So, I was able to go on. Well, anybody can go on OptiURx.com, and you can click consultation with Billy.
Yeah,
and it was just like it took years of exploring all these different things to be able to finally sit down with one person who could look at all the different aspects of what was going on with my hormones, with my eating, with my thyroid, all these different things, and explain to me how they do work together, explain my blood labs.
I just noticed that.
Is this the whole time?
That's all right. I just saw it.
So anyway, subscribe, and get a consultation if you have questions.
Yeah. And this has been fun, Janet.
And I realized I didn't have my headphones on the whole time. So did this work, Mike? All right.
All right. We're good. Thank you.